Welcome, Kingdom Warriors. We are Relentless Glory, here to relentlessly provide you with motivation, education, and of course, relentlessly be praising God. I'm Coach Jayme, and this is Coach Liv. Yo, guys, what's going on? Coach Jayme here, and I am one of the founders of Relentless Glory, and Coach Liv and I have decided to start delegating Tuesdays as Testimony Tuesdays. So you guys can find us on pretty much all social media platforms, but I'm going to go first, and this is going to kind of do a couple things. It's going to give you a chance to learn a little bit more about the owners behind the brand, but also hopefully encourage somebody to want to share their testimony in the way that God has changed their lives as well. And then also, like, even if it's just one person, I pray that sharing my testimony is something that is going to be able to add value to whoever comes across this. So this testimony is for somebody. I believe that, God has kind of us experience certain things so we can be healing to others by sharing that. So, this is going to be fun. Not so much because I have shared this testimony many of times, but actually never on a live type of platform. So there's many many different testimonies, I guess, that I have that I could be sharing with you guys today. And I've chosen a very, very particular one that was one of many very low points and just dark places that I had gotten to in my life. Quick backstory about me is I was born and raised in a really, really small town and was, baptized and raised in a Catholic church. So for me, like, I was forced to know God, and everything was a rule. And if you didn't follow, like, you would be punished. And it was just a very, like, law-driven atmosphere. And I didn't know how to know him. So like I knew that there was a place that I was going after this life and what prayers I was forced to learn and say and all of the little different things of like receiving the body and blood of Christ, but I didn't know what was going on. But the reason why I share that is because God was there the whole time, even though like I knew of him, but I didn't know him, right? And there were many things that had happened in my life that caused me to walk away from my faith. One in particular was when I was 16. I lost two of my best friends in a car accident, and being in a very small town, we had one priest that would preach at 3 different churches because they were all super close. And the funerals were held in 2 of the 3 churches that I attended regularly. So being 16 and not understanding why something like that had to happen, and then having to go there and be reminded of it, and even music that was played during the funeral services were songs that I would hear on a regular Sunday. So I very much was angry with God, and I walked away from my faith. And it was even at that point that my mom stopped forcing me to go because I was a mess. So I very much already pulled away from this concept of this God I was forced to know. And then also, like, I came from a broken family, and just still out of respect for my family because I love them so dearly, and they have been amazing family members to me. There was obviously some not so good things that had happened, and very much through my journey and the way I perceived life as it was happening to me, I was a very, very broken soul and just never felt enough. And I ended up getting into a very, very toxic relationship when I graduated high school. And not having God in my life, latching onto a relationship to try to desperately crave love and attention from a person who is not capable of giving it to me. It was very toxic. Drugs, alcohol, attempts of suicide. There was an instance of rape. There was cheating. There was manipulation. Luckily, no marriage or kids came from it, but it was a very toxic relationship nonetheless.
And even at one point, I had forced them to try to go to church with me because I thought, okay, if I'm going to marry this man, which thank God I didn't, then I wanted him to go to church. But I didn't even know who God was. And I tried going back into my faith and taking him with me, and it didn't work. And instead, alcohol was more fun. And just doing very inappropriate things and just living a very toxic life, and just not feeling worthy of anything. It was a vicious cycle. And there was one particular instance, and even to this day, I am very sensitive around New Year's Eve for this particular reason. I was around my boyfriend at the time's family, and I was broken. I was never feeling like I was enough. I didn't trust anything about the relationship. And now I am outside of my element, insanely intoxicated around him and his entire family. Something happened that triggered a massive spiral. I wanted to leave. Obviously, I couldn't drive. Okay. This is where this story is going to start getting hard. My mother was also not in town, and she had been drinking. So in the midst of me being insanely wasted and not even aware of what I was doing and the way that I was lashing out and just acting like an absolute crazy person, they had to call my dad. And at that time, I was not in a good place with my relationship with my father. I blamed him a lot for being with the kind of individual that I was with. Although I still latched on to that individual for some reason. And I even ended up pushing my ex's pregnant stepmom. I don't know. I was a mess, right? And the next thing I know that there is this vehicle pulling into the driveway, and it's my dad. And he's like, Jayme, we're going home. Now my parents are divorced, so they didn't live with one another, and they've been divorced since I was 5, but, they only lived a couple miles from each other. Again, I grew up in a very small town, middle of nowhere place. And I did not want to get in the vehicle with him. I'm like, you're the last person that I trust to save the day right now, right? Somehow they ended up loading me up in the car. And I was bawling my eyes out. I don't even know what all I had said to my father on that drive home. But then at one point he finally was like, you're staying at my house. And I was like, the F if I am, I'm not going anywhere near your home. Take me back to my mother's home, because I was living with my mother at the time. I was probably 19. And I threw myself out of a moving vehicle. I had heels on and everything. I don't even know how it happened. And it was raining outside, and threw myself out of a moving vehicle because I was not going home with him. And I ran a mile in heels to literally get away from my dad to get back to my mother's house. So I go inside, the code of the garage to get into my mother's home, and locked my dad out. Because remember, they're divorced. My dad's obviously not going to know the code or have a key to get in. And I locked myself in the bathroom and attempted to slit my wrists. And was just bawling my eyes out in the bathroom. My dad at some point must have got a hold of my mom, was sitting in the living room. I don't even know how long he was there for. I don't even know if he heard me, what was happening, but either way, I was attempting to slit my wrist in the bathroom. And next thing I remember, I am laying in my bed, and my mother is in my bed with me, bawling my eyes out, holding on to her, and begging her to let me kill myself. And I personally, I don't have any kids. But I think about it frequently about how that could have been, how that was for her in that moment. Here's one of your children that is so sad. That is so sad and just so broken that she doesn't even want to be alive anymore. And here she is loving her daughter and not knowing. I personally would not know how to be there in that type of situation. And so I just remember saying that I was listen, I will not do this. Like, I will not kill myself. Obviously, I tried and it was a failed attempt. But I was like, I will not do this unless you give me the permission. Will you please just let me die? Like, let me just end this now, because this is not, like, I don't want to be here. You don't want me here. Like, I'm a terrible person. Like, I don't want to be here. And I just remember her, like, latching on to me. I don't remember her saying anything. That's all I remember. Now, the interesting part about this testimony and why I feel so compelled to share this with whoever is getting the opportunity to see this is, when following God and having these massive stories, everybody expects that there's this magical moment where they like found God and life just changed drastically for the better and it stayed amazing. For me, it didn't. Like, that next day, like, I was hungover, not even knowing what really had happened, and mainly still feeling completely worthless because the person that I loved so dearly didn't love me. And it was a very hard phase, right? And so, as much as what I would like to say, oh my gosh, like, I had this sense to want to go to church and like pray to God and stuff, it wasn't that way. But I promise the good side of this testimony is coming, guys, so bear with me. I continued on to just bend until I broke, and then I found a way to break some more, going back and forth in this toxic relationship that went on for 5.5 years. And then, as much as what I would like to say, even again, that there was this great moment where I was strong enough to walk away from that situation, I wasn't. It was removed for me. And he ended up like finding somebody else, and they did their thing, and I was just left to figure out how I was going to pick up the pieces and move forward, questioning everything, right? So to kind of speed up a little bit of this testimony, I ended up kind of doing a lot of different things that ended up pulling me out of the environment that I was in, taking some risks, and then I got involved just with people that started to kind of talk about God. And then I got a little interested, and I started listening more to like different YouTube sermons, like with different pastors and all of that. And I'm like, okay, like there's something to this, right? Like I'm feeling better. And finally one time I was like, okay, like I'm gonna go to church. I'm gonna go back to church. So I went back to a church, and like the message I felt like completely spoke to me, and I bawled my eyes out, and I was like, oh my gosh, like things are going good. I was still a mess, but I was slowly heading in the right direction. Again, this isn't this peak moment just yet, but that is why I, again, feel so encouraged to share this with you, is because sometimes we can only connect the dots looking backward, right? And so through all of this, I'm making my way, right, on this journey of stepping back onto the right path after going down the wrong one for so long. I made a lot of mistakes. There was a couple other times of still attempted suicide. There was some very unfortunate situations that happened sexually. There was a lot of issues with drugs, alcohol. But I still was slowly getting more and more involved in my faith. And I was just like listening more to Christian music and was just starting to do better things for my body. And then bit by bit, it became more of a habit. And life started to get better. Was it still hard? Yes. But I grew stronger. I started pouring my energy into the right things rather than the wrong things. And then years later, so let's even say this was probably like 4 or 5 years ago. So there's like a good time span of like 9 to 10 years that we're in this gap of this suicide attempt and begging my mother to end my life, right? I had went to church. I was living out of the state, and I would call my mom every Sunday after church, and I would tell her what I learned from that message and just catch up with her. And this one particular morning, like I thought about that memory. Because the priest had said something in the sermon about, like, think of some of the darkest times in your life. Close your eyes and picture where God was in that moment. And that memory came up. Like, there was no light that was shining in that moment. Like, I was a terrible child. I was a broken, crazy, hot mess trying to end my life. Like, how in the world? There's no way that God was there in that moment. And so I brought this up to my mom on the phone, and we started talking about it. And she's like, Jayme, that night for me was even an entire blur. She's like, I don't know. I didn't know what to do. She's like, I just kept praying. And what I found very quickly is that God was still present in that moment. Because, again, connecting the dots, looking backward, the amount of strength that I had gained since that experience, the amount of people that I have been able to encourage through some dark times in their life, all happened because God let my attempt of suicide be failed, right? Because I tried and it didn't work. I begged to get permission. Obviously, my mom wasn't going to say yes, but somehow she was able to be there and just hold me and pray. And so, although it was such a dark moment, God was still there in that moment. And he kept me alive for a reason. He wasn't done with me. So, again, to just kick off this new series here at Relentless Glory of what we are doing is sharing testimonies. And that is one of the most profound testimonies, because there's many, which the more you guys like and follow and just continue to grow on this journey with us, you'll be able to hear more and more about who we are and how we got here. But that is definitely one of the most profound moments of my life. And although I didn't notice it in that moment, it happened. And he pulled me through it. And he's made me stronger because of it. And he was the light in that moment for my mother and I. And now he has blessed with me finally allowing myself to draw closer to him and to not just know of him, but to get to know him. I now have that light to be able to shine on other people and support and be there in those dark, dark moments. So thank you guys for tuning in and letting me be vulnerable and share a bit of my story. I guess I also just want to finish with this, is that if you know somebody who is in a toxic, abusive relationship, if you know somebody who is in a very low space, please send this to them, or just send them to our page and have them follow along so we can be here to pray for and support people who are going through similar things. And even if they're not going through similar things, darkness is darkness, guys, and there is always still light present. And that's what we want to do here, is to be able to inspire and just shine light on all of the dark that is in this world, because both exist and the light always wins. So although it took me a very long time, I always like to say I was and I still am in many ways, a slow learner. I take the scenic route many of times. But it's always been worth it. And I am so grateful to be able to be here to share this story. And I hope, again, it just shines light on somebody. So I guess my final thing is, again, if you know anybody that this would impact, please share. Please follow along to more of our content. Coach Liv is actually going to be sharing a bit of her testimony next Tuesday. But what we also want to do is we want to be here to support you guys. And if you have a testimony that you would like to share, please send us a message. We would love to hear your testimony, and we would love to be able to help give a platform for you to have the strength and ability to be empowered by sharing your story, to be able to help heal others too, because you never know who needs to hear your story. Super transparent moment. I was actually just talking with Coach Liv before going live on this, and there's many of times that I don't feel like my story is that bad, because I have heard some very, very dark stories from people, but your story still matters. So no matter how big or small you feel your excuse my language, your shitstorm of an experience has been, your story matters. Your words will provide healing, not even to other people, but also to you. So please, again, message us with your testimony. Pass along to somebody who may have a testimony that they would be able to spread the word and just empower others with. Bring them to us. You can find us on all platforms. Like I had mentioned, we have our Instagram, we have a YouTube page, we have a Facebook page, we have a TikTok. So please, guys, like and share away, because we are here to relentlessly show and share God to anyone and everyone we can. So we will relentlessly keep doing so, but we ask for your help to be able to spread more of him to everybody in this world. So thank you so much for tuning in to our first official Testimonial Tuesday. With love and gratitude, Coach Jayme, out.
Well, thanks for being here. Now go be relentless for the glory of God.